Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. All right, so I'm sharing my screen and we are going to start jumping into this and start talking about Copaiba versus CBD oil. So the first thing that I do want to mention is let's remember that when we're talking about this is information that I've actually pulled from current research that has been done by doTERRA, research specifically from Dr. Hill, and then also other credible resources on this topic, and that I have referenced at the end of this presentation. And I'm going to be as compliant as possible as I can to talk about this. And I just wanted to make sure that I'm trying to make this and explain this as simple as possible, because it is a complex subject and it was making my head hurt, researching this and trying to understand too. So keep that in mind. And if anyone has any questions, just let me know. It's hard for me to see when I'm in presentation mode. So if I don't see them as we're going through, I will definitely address them towards the end. So the first thing that we need to really understand when we're talking about Copaiba versus CBD oil is we really need to understand what the endocannabinoid system is. And so we've probably heard this a lot. Maybe this is new to some of you, but maybe we've heard Dr. Hill talking about this a lot. And it's a really important thing to understand. We need to know what the foundation is of how Copaiba and CBD oil works within our bodies, and to really understand why somebody would choose one over the other or even use both. So when we talk about the endocannabinoid system, so what this really is a neurotransmitter network. And this was actually discovered in the 1980s. So it's not really that old. It was actually something that was discovered and they felt like they needed to make it a completely separate system because of the complexity of it. So they coined this term, the endocannabinoid system. And so really the one takeaway I want you to have from this system is think of it as a balance. So the endocannabinoid system is always working to achieve balance within our bodies, or homeostasis, what we call it. And so what it means is it's trying to always create a balance or a stable internal environment within our bodies, despite any changes that are happening in our external environment, okay? So maybe we are putting things into our bodies, or we have access to different stimulus outside of our bodies. And so the endocannabinoid system is going to try to really create that balance within our body. So within the endocannabinoid system, we have what are called cannabinoids. Okay, and so we'll talk about those a little bit, what those mean. And then we also have cannabinoid receptors. All right, so think of cannabinoids as, we're going to use a situation here so we can really better understand. Think of cannabinoids as keys. Okay, cannabinoids are all over our bodies. They're floating in our bodies. So we have all of these keys that are floating and circulating in our bodies. Now, these cannabinoids or keys are trying to find a specific receptor that it can insert the key into, unlock, and then open up. And so it's trying to find those receptors, and once it has unlocked that receptor, then that's going to allow specific things to happen within our bodies, right? So specific receptors that we're talking about within the endocannabinoid system that are specifically impacted by Copaiba oil and CBD oil are the cannabinoid 1 and 2, or CB1 and CB2 receptors. So if we take a look at the CB1 receptors, those are primarily found in our brain and in the central nervous system. So really in our central nervous system, those are sort of our nerve tissues that control activities in our body, such as our spinal cord, okay? Now, if we take CB2 receptors, those are actually found within our endocrine system and then also the immune system. So in the endocrine system, This is basically just a chemical messenger system. So it's all of our glands that are in our body that consist of hormones, okay? So it's everything else that's in our body besides our brain and our central nervous system. Okay, so what is a cannabinoid? So I kind of touched on that before. So again, think of those as the cannabinoids are the keys that are circulating in our bodies, and they're trying to find those receptors that they can unlock so that we can experience something in our body. So as Dr. Hill put it, I thought that he had a really nice definition of what a cannabinoid is. So really, it's any chemistry that can influence or unlock the appropriate receptor, okay, within our bodies. So in this discussion, we're really focusing on the receptors CB1 and CB2, and there are thousands of other receptors that are within our body, but CB1 and CB2 is what you're going to hear a lot about in terms of Copaiba and CBD oil. So cannabinoids, keys to unlock the receptors. So we're going to talk about 3 different types of cannabinoids or keys that are typically found when we talk in terms of cannabis and also in Copaiba oil. So the first one is CBD, right? So this is probably one of the most popular cannabinoids that we're all very familiar with. So we have our CBD. So this is actually a shortened name for cannabidiol. And so this is found in cannabis and in hemp. And so this does not actually act directly on CB receptors, so neither CB1 or CB2. And so this is going to make a little bit more sense as we start talking. I'll explain how that's going to work. So just keep that in mind that CBD does not directly act on CB receptors 1 and 2. The next one is THC, and I'm sure that a lot of us are familiar with THC as well. So that's tetrahydrocannabinol, and THC is also found in cannabis or the marijuana plant. So something to remember with THC is that it does bind to or unlock CB1 receptors that are in the brain and the central nervous system. Okay, so those directly affect the CB1 receptors in the brain and central nervous system. So because of that, because it specifically targets and unlocks that CB1 receptor, what happens with the THC and what is known for is it produces that high sense of euphoria, okay? So that's what gives that high feeling, that psychoaffective or psychoactive effect with THC. So an oil containing THC is obviously a regulatory and a legal challenge, right? Because it's not legal. And it does produce a lot of unwanted side effects that go along with that. And then the last cannabinoid that we're going to talk about, which is primarily specific to essential oils and specifically Copaiba, is called BCP or beta-caryophyllene. So these are found in essential oils in a variety of plants, and it's also found in cannabis as well, naturally, but in a lot lower levels. It binds directly to CB2 receptors. And so again, those are in the endocrine system and the immune system. So really everything else in our body. So this is something really important to remember too. BCP binds directly to CB2 receptors. All right, so let's talk a little bit about THC and the brain. So THC acts on specific brain receptors that ordinarily react to natural THC-like chemicals. All right, so we have those natural chemicals that sort of mimic THC. But these natural chemicals play a role in normal brain development and function. So when somebody consumes or smokes cannabis, what happens is the cannabis overactivates parts of the brain that contain the highest number of these receptors. So then what happens is you can see on this picture of the brain, all of those yellow dots is where that THC is overactivating and stimulating within the brain. So you can see that it's going to give us higher levels of, it's going to impact our judgment, our memory, coordination, sensations. And so that's where we start getting that the psycho active effects of THC. So those side effects we're going to see is that euphoria. It can actually induce anxiety. So for a lot of times when people are trying to use cannabis, it's for anxiety purposes to decrease anxious feelings, it's actually doing the opposite and causing anxiety. And it's also been shown to have short-term memory impairment as well. So I thought what it was interesting was, I had seen in some research that the amount of THC in cannabis has actually been increasing steadily over the last several decades. And because of that, there's been a significantly larger amount or rise in the levels, the amount of emergency room visits involving cannabis use, because this is actually really unregulated. So people are getting this cannabis and they don't know how much THC is in here. It can also mean that, the different ways that you can consume it. There's edibles are really on the rise. And so typically that doesn't peak within about until 30 minutes after consumed. And so people aren't realizing that and consuming a lot more. And then it ends them up into the emergency room. So that's a real issue because it's actually unregulated. So now let's talk a little bit more about CBD. Okay, and so before we said that CBD does not necessarily act directly on the CB1 and CB2 receptors. So let's first talk about a lot of the benefits of CBD oil, because research has shown that it has been proven very, very effective for a lot of people. Specifically, it can help with certain ailments such as acne, anxiety, chronic pain, depression, all the way down. You can see all of these things it helps with, muscle spasms, Parkinson's, okay? But like I said, it does not directly bind to CB receptors. So instead, what happens is, and this is something that's really important to understand, and it's kind of hard to understand, think of it as it's acting on them indirectly by activating other receptors that will then influence the other receptors. So let's go back to that key example. And if we say with CBD, is a key and it's circulating and it's trying to find our receptors, right? So it sees the receptors CB1 and CB2 receptors. The key is not going to fit into those receptors. So then what does it do? It goes and it finds a different type of receptor, and the key fits, it unlocks it. So then we get an effect in our body, and then that triggers another receptor, which then circulates and starts floating around and is now trying to find the CB1 and CB2 receptors until it indirectly goes through several different levels of keys to unlock those receptors, which ultimately, in the end, the CBD will affect the CB1 or CB2 receptors, but not in a direct manner. So that's what we mean when we say that it's not directly binding to those CB receptors, okay? Something to remember too is that when people do use CBD, it does tend to interact or influence the CB1 receptors, like I said, indirectly. But what it does is it can change the shape of that receptor and it weakens it. And so it weakens its ability to bind with THC. So what you'll find is that a lot of times people are using CBD with THC because it then lessens the high that you're going to get typically with THC. And so it can give some really good benefits for somebody who might be suffering from an extreme ailment, in some cases, extreme pain, chemotherapy. Some research has actually supported some of those things that it can help with. Okay, so to continue talking about CBD, some other things to note about this is that there is specific dosing that goes along with CBD. So typically what happens is there's specific dosing that you should be using CBD with for up to specific periods of time. And CBD can actually still contain THC. So a lot of times they advertise that it does not have THC, but because the CBD oil industry is not heavily regulated, that if it's not a pure CBD form, it still may have trace forms of THC in there. So, a lot of times that because this is not necessarily legal in all states, a lot of times people are concerned, even though they're using the CBD oil, if there's drug testing, through their work, that is a concern for some people because there can still be traces of that THC in there, which is really registered within the drug testing. Also, like I said, because CBD oil products are mostly unregulated, you're not necessarily guaranteed that any given product is actually containing a safe or an effective level of CBD oil. And so it kind of is similar to the essential oil industry, right? It's not necessarily regulated. And so if you're going to go to a $5 bin at, a store and grab a lavender oil, we all know, right? That's not the same lavender that you're going to find with doTERRA. It's diluted and it changes the therapeutic benefits of that oil. So it's the same thing with a CBD oil. So you have to make sure that you're buying it from somebody who is offering a very, very pure form of the oil. The dosing also is impacted by the type of administration that you're going to be using the CBD oil or how you're using that oil. So with CBD, you can use it as an ingestible. So you can actually consume it. There's actually nasal sprays as well that can be sprayed in your nose. You can smoke it and then it can be applied topically. So depending on that route, is going to change the dosing of the CBD oil. And a couple of different facts that I saw specifically from the Mayo Clinic, Mayo Clinic suggests that CBD dosage should be based on scientific research, publications, traditional use, and expert opinion, which is, the same. I mean, that should be the same for anything that we're going to be consuming or applying on our body, right? But the problem is that CBD still has a lot of outstanding research. There is a lot of research out there, but there's still research as to how it works in our body, especially since it doesn't necessarily bind specifically to CB1 and CB2 receptors. The dosage and the duration of the treatment depends mainly on the illness and countless other factors, right? So what they're saying is that they recommend that you dose based upon the issue that you're trying to correct. So if it's a specific illness, there's different dosing protocols according to that. But you also have to factor in other comorbidities and other factors and how that CBD oil is going to affect your body because it doesn't bind directly to a specific receptor. There are specific, agencies that have developed a standard in terms of dosaging. And so one is the CBD oil review. And so as an example, they have recommended that the standard serving for CBD oil is 25 milligrams taken twice daily. Okay. And what they've also said is that additionally, according to their analysis, they suggest increasing the amount of CBD you take every 3 to 4 weeks by 25 milligrams until you attain symptom relief. And then you can also, kind of decrease by 25 milligrams if the symptoms worsen. So you can see here that it's very difficult to dose CBD oil. As you're starting out slowly and you're increasing, what comes along with that, because we're not sure exactly which receptors that this is going to bind to, you might start seeing a lot of side effects. And so as you're seeing those side effects, you might have to start dosing down, okay? So which moves us into the next slide here is some of these side effects that we might see while we're trying to dose during initial dosing of the CBD oil. So take a look at some of the side effects. So it could cause anxiety, changes in appetite, changes in mood, diarrhea, dizziness, dry mouth, nausea, vomiting. And then also it's linked to increased liver enzymes, okay? So increased liver enzymes it's actually a marker of liver damage or inflammation. And now these are just some of the documented side effects that they have found, which not necessarily is the case for everybody, but some people have experienced some of these side effects. I was recently watching a video of a man who was using CBD oil to really help with headaches. And it was working really well for a while until he had to start increasing his dosage, and it started giving him some rebound headaches. And so it started making the headaches even worse than they were before by increasing the dosage. So they had to, start decreasing that dosage until you can really find that balance. In fact, there was actually a study that was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. That was 2017. And nearly 70% of all CBD products sold online are incorrectly labeled and could cause serious harm to consumers. So because they're incorrectly labeled, we don't know the levels of CBD oil that's in there. So it's really hard to dose and know how much that you need to be taking to achieve the maximum benefits without any of those side effects. Also, some CBD oils may contain incorrectly labeled amounts of THC and other compounds, right? So if there are some levels of that THC in there, you might start experiencing those side effects that come along with THC as well. Now, not to say that a lot of people are finding CBD oil to help them profoundly and don't really experience these side effects. However, some people do experience these, and these are possibilities that have been documented as side effects. So now we're going to go more into the beta-caryophyllene. So this is BCP, all right? So this is actually what is found in essential oils. So what is it? What is beta-caryophyllene or BCP? So BCP is actually, I had said that it's a cannabinoid, and it technically is, but really what it's called is it's called a terpene. And terpenes are actually found in cannabis, like I stated before. So these are naturally occurring in the cannabis plant. So BCP is actually one of 300,000 terpenes found in nature. So terpenes and cannabinoids are considered sister compounds because they do a lot of the same things. They activate a lot or bind to a lot of the same receptors. So BCP is indeed found in essential oils, and it actually binds directly to the CB2 receptor. So this is scientifically proven that it does bind to that CB2 receptor. And again, that's in our endocrine system that involves our hormones and the immune system. And so everything else that's going inside of our body, outside of the brain and the central nervous system. What it's also been found is that BCP has been found to work to improve overall health and well-being. And the reason why is because it can bind directly to those CB2 receptors. So the CB2 receptors are responsible for a high level of health benefits associated with BCP because the terpene activates those receptors. So again, the terpene is like that key that we were talking about that's circulating in our body, and it is actually able to insert the key into the CB2 receptor, unlock it, which then is going to produce these specific effects within our bodies, right? So according to research, BCP or beta-caryophyllene, its impact on CB2 can cause some very beneficial effects. So it can actually cause to soothe the body's response to stress and anxiety, primarily because it's protecting anandamide, which is a neurotransmitter known as the bliss molecule. So really, this is going to help us reducing those anxious feelings and to really calm the body because of that ability to bind to the CB2 receptor. Also, scientists have determined that CB2 receptors helped influence the release of feel-good chemical dopamine. So for those of you that were on Wellness Wednesday last week, we talked about some of the chemicals that help impact our mood. And dopamine was one of those. So those are those chemicals that we get during pleasurable activities. And then also, it has a similar and soothing and relaxing properties on the body, similar to that prompted by the CB1 activation. Okay, that's where the THC binds to the CB1 and gives you that high feeling, but without the potential psychoactive side effects. So it's allowing you to get the benefits of CB1 receptors being unlocked and CB2 receptors at the same time. So changes in CB2 receptor function is synonymous with virtually every type of human disease. Okay, so that's really important to remember when we're talking about BCP binding directly to CB2 receptors, because all of those receptors are what controls what happens within our bodies, right? And that is what leads to disease, to illness, to our mood, everything. So, benefits of beta-carophylline. Okay, so what it's been known to do is to support healthy immune system. It decreases stress and anxious feelings, helps reduce inflammation, right? Promotes healthy digestion and gut health. And so that actually is really important, because last week we also talked about gut health and how it impacts our mood. So having a healthy digestion and gut health is thus going to decrease inflammation within our guts, and it's going to keep our flora in our gut healthy. And so remember when I said last week that 95% of our serotonin is created within our gut. Serotonin is linked to triggering how our mood is impacted throughout our body. So we can start seeing how a lot of these things are is kind of like a cyclical effect, and it's actually affecting one another within our bodies. Also, it also has an analgesic effect. So this is really going to help to reduce discomfort, right? And so these include supporting a healthy inflammatory response, soothing discomfort, positively affecting our mood without the psychoactive side effects that we'll see with other cannabinoids, such as THC and in some forms of CBD. And any side effects of beta-carophylline? No, we don't have any side effects known at this time. I have not seen any. I haven't heard any from, from doTERRA that they've claimed, or from Dr. Hill, or any of the research that I've found. So on the right-hand side here, this is just showing us that the beta-carophylline, or BCP, it is found naturally in essential oils. And so it's actually within a lot of the essential oils that a lot of us use already. So, for example, cannabis has a 35% BCP. Juniper berry, helichrysum, that has 5%, so that's pretty low. Clove has 8%, ylang ylang and melissa, 13%. Black pepper, 21%. And then we get to copaiba. Copaiba has, you'll see different levels, 55 to 60% BCP. That is the highest level of BCP that has been found in a natural product so far. And so copaiba is one of the highest levels and percentages of beta-carophylline that we know of today. So copaiba, just to kind of touch a little bit more, this came directly from Dr. Hill. So with copaiba, a lot of the benefits, again, is that it's going to provide liver and antioxidant support. So a couple slides back, we had mentioned with CBD that one of the side effects actually can increase liver enzymes, and which is a marker of liver damage and inflammation. So copaiba actually does the opposite, right? So it's actually going to support your liver and those antioxidants. So you're not going to see those side effects. Also, it's good for overall cardiovascular health. It's going to sustain proper immune response and help us with our immune systems, like we said before, digestive support, support proper neurological function, so help with those, with our moods, and then also proper respiratory function. So Dr. Hill also said, what I really liked that he had said as well, is that Copaiba has the right delivery and right concentration, supporting the body in its natural process. So because Copaiba is so, it's an amazing oil because it's so smart that with the right delivery, taking it internally or using it aromatically or applying it topically, it knows the right concentration to be able to support the body in its natural process, right? And then you can also use Copaiba on a daily basis to support the entire body versus isolated incidences. So a lot of times with CBD oil, some people use it for specific ailments, but some people I've seen are using it just for overall health. However, from what we're seeing is that there's a lot more research that is showing support on beta carophylline supporting the overall health of your body. So because they can actually bind directly to those CB2 receptors versus the CBD oil, because it's binding indirectly, you're not exactly sure of which receptor it's going to affect because it's doing it indirectly. So there are pros and cons to CBD oil versus Copaiba. I think that it just depends on what you're trying to accomplish. And then lastly, I just wanted to go over some of the top 10 uses for Copaiba, specifically how we can actually use this oil. So for example, for systemic support, so if we want to use this as, overall health and wellness to support our entire body, you can add 1 to 2 drops of Copaiba to your water, to your juice, and take that every single day. You're going to see amazing health benefits right here for cardiovascular, immune, digestive, nervous, and respiratory. You can see cellular health. So we can affect our cells by using Copaiba in addition to DDR prime, which is used for our cellular support. Gut and organ cleansing. Okay, we can see that Copaiba provides more than just antioxidant support when ingested. And so if you put this into your routine, taking it internally, you can see that there's some more changes happening in your body. Nervous support, even skin health. So Copaiba is really, really good for if you've got minor abrasions, if you have blemishes on your skin. Copaiba can help heal that, along with Melaleuca. For your teeth and gum, I know I've got 2 little ones that are teething right now, and so I can add a drop onto my finger, rub it along their gum line, and it works wonderfully to help with teething. Muscles and aches. So there's really fantastic blends that you can make to help with those aches and pains. You can layer this on with deep blue. It's giving you an example here with frankincense, marjoram, lemongrass, Copaiba. Take it internally as well. We now have the Copaiba soft gel, so it makes it really, really easy. And then you can make roller balls to apply topically as well. Even menstrual cramps, head and neck tension, and just relaxing and calming. So I think that went a little bit longer than anticipated, but let me go ahead and cancel out of here and go back into the live view. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, I know that was a lot of information. I hope that that helped explain a little bit further and help you understand, exactly what the hype is between Copaiba and CBD. I hope that was helpful. If anybody has any questions, feel free to send me a message within the group, and I'm happy to answer that. All right, so everyone, thank you for joining.